name, amen. All right. If you have your Bibles, I'd like to start by reading from it. So turn in your Bibles to Acts chapter 11. Acts chapter 11. I just want to read 4 verses for you, the last 4 verses of Acts chapter 11. And I want to make a statement about it, and then I'll give you my report. I hear pages turning, that's why I'm waiting. All right, Acts chapter 11, starting in verse number 27, God's word says this. Now at this time, some prophets came down from Jerusalem to Antioch. One of them, named Agabus, stood up and began to indicate by the Spirit that there would certainly be a great famine all over the world. And this took place in the reign of Claudius. And in the proportion that any of the disciples had means, each of them determined to send a contribution for the relief of the brethren living in Judea. And this they did, sending it in charge of Barnabas and Saul to the elders. So if you've been a Southern Baptist for longer than a minute, you've probably heard this passage preached as the foundation of cooperation. We are cooperating Baptist churches. We don't belong to another church. They don't belong to us. We are sister churches, but we indeed go to their aid when we can and when we know. And it comes from passages like this, where churches helped to take care of other churches. And so it was in this spirit that Brother Robin and I went out west, western North Carolina, this week. We had the opportunity. I was offered an opportunity to go. I'll share all of that with you in just a second. But we are not a silo. We are part of the body of Christ. And we are, in some ways, an independent, autonomous church. But in other ways, we are connected to other churches when it comes to the sending of the gospel, the sending of missionaries, and also when it comes time for relief efforts with one another, and in this case, for one another. And so that's really what I want you to understand. I want you to see that it's scriptural, and then recognize that what you're about to see looks like, and I even prayed this earlier because I want to keep it clear in our minds, there are lots and lots and lots and lots of volunteer organizations that can meet physical needs. They can go, anybody can go and take water or other things. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't, but what I'm saying is we have to recognize that we are entrusted with something greater than water that we'll drink and then we'll get thirsty over again. We've been entrusted the water that when we drink, we'll never thirst again. And in fact, when we put our faith in Jesus, wells of that living water will spring up within us and will stay with us. So remember that in everything that you see here, our main goal is to be the hands and feet of Jesus and to act and say and do the same things that Jesus would do. Now, Jesus would always meet physical needs, but he would always meet physical needs. Well, not always, not like every person that ever had a physical need did he meet. But he met physical needs first, but he always did it when he did that as a demonstration of his power to meet spiritual needs. They lowered the guy on the bed into his midst, and he says, "My son, your sins are forgiven." And those Pharisees said, "Who's this who pretends to forgive his sins?" And he says, "What? You think it's easier for me to say, 'Take up your bed and walk'? But so that you'll know that I have the power to forgive sins, take up your bed and walk." And the guy got up and walked off. But it was a demonstration of his power to be able to forgive sins. So remember, we are talking about the greatest need on earth is lostness. It's not anything that has to do with physical needs. Physical needs are important, but lostness is what Jesus came to do. He came to seek and to save that which is lost. And so we have that message. And so I want you to remember that. Keep that in mind as we go through this. So what did we do? Well, first, let me go over the current conditions on the ground. This is probably what you want to hear first. Recognize that we are, hey, y'all, welcome. Glad you're here. All right. So we're just getting started. We just had prayer, and we are just now starting the discussion about what's going on in western North Carolina. We are 3.5 weeks out from that hurricane that came through, which means that what I'm going to show you is vastly different than what was on the ground 3.5 weeks ago, or even 2.5 weeks ago. Things are changing there. If you remember, if you saw those early pictures, there were trees all over most of the roadways. Well, now the trees are sticking out from the roadways, but they've been cut off. I mean, there's corridors of tree. I mean, there was not a road except the one with the one that we went up on Ivy Hill or whatever it was called. There wasn't one road that we couldn't pass by. There was just the one, and the bridge was out, and so we had to turn back around and go all the way back around. But they have done so much cleaning up the roadways that they are. Now, I'm not talking about roads between North Carolina and Tennessee. I'm talking about the roads in Buncombe County and around Asheville and in the areas that we were. So 3.5 weeks makes a huge, huge difference. In fact, everything looked the same. Robin kept saying to me, haven't we been this way before? And we're like, no, that's just because the sticks are still sticking out from them. I mean, all you're seeing are these tree trunks coming out at you when you're going through. So if the road still exists, they are passable. The trees have been cleared. The debris has been collected and is off the roadways. So if the roads exist, they're passable. There are several roads that have been washed away completely. We were on a road in Hendersonville, and Hendersonville wasn't touched much. That I said, did you see that? Because it was broken right in two, straight down the middle of my lane. It was cracked where evidently the road bed had shifted with all the water, and the asphalt snapped in two. And so, I mean, it wasn't dangerous, but you could see it there. Most small bridges and all the personal bridges that we saw are gone. What you need to know, if you've not been out there, most of the people, they live on the higher ground so they can have the view, but they have a bridge that goes over whatever stream or creek that's between the road and their house. Most of those are completely gone. They can't get across those. They probably are not a priority. I mean, they would be for that person, but those are probably not a priority rebuild. And so it may be a long, long time before those things, they're able to put new culverts in and all the stuff that's going to happen. And then most small bridges are gone. The bridges that are, and you'll see a picture in just a second, the bridges that are still intact have acted like sieves in a stream, and all the debris and stuff that was rushing downstream has caught on those bridges. The big cattle gates, the big metal cattle gates that farmers have, we saw 3 or 4 of them caught in trees or on those bridges. And when one of those things catches, everything catches onto it, and it just becomes a big dam in the waterway. And so there was lots of that we saw. What surprised me, and it's only because I grew up in Florida, and when a hurricane would come through, it would affect the whole area. If it went through, that's what was affected. That's not the way it is there, not by a long shot. So my mind didn't wrap around. Most of what we saw was not affected because most of it's high ground. So all the high ground that's out there, if you had a house on the high ground, not much affected. You may have some water damage or a roof blown off of your house or something like that. But it's all the stuff in the low ground that was just decimated. And so there are swaths of disaster, but the whole place is not a disaster, which was something different for me to see. Some localized areas are significantly affected, though, or those are the ones you're seeing on TV, all of those kinds of pictures. Most visible destruction can be seen along the waterways, the rivers, the creeks. We saw lots and lots. We stayed in Fruitland, out from Hendersonville. There's a Fruitland Bible College that North Carolina Baptists operate and own, and that's where we stayed in the dorms Monday night. And you could see just lots and lots of fields that were covered over in water. And so tomatoes with all their stakes laying flat, apples on the ground, lots of apples, still some apples on the trees, but the apple trees don't have any leaves on them. They're barren, but there's still a lot of apples on the trees, but a lot of apples on the ground. We went by a cattle farm that they were feeding the apples to the cows. I guess they had picked up all the deadfall apples and taken them there. There was a pond that looked like it had a film over top of it, and it looked almost like an oil slick. But when you got close enough, you realized that it was just loaded with apples. They were floating in the water in the pond. So just lots and lots of produce. We heard of a cattle rancher that lost 400 head of cattle because pastures and farmland is low ground. And so that's where they were, just lots and lots of devastation. So those are the current conditions on the ground. I want to show you, I have 3 short videos and then some pictures that Robin took. Robin took all of this except maybe one picture. He was my ride along, and he was taking pictures out the window for me. So that's all mud and debris. As we're going down one of the roads. That looks like the road going to Barnardsville, I think. Is that Swannanoa? If you take a map, I'll show it to you in a second, and go straight north to south from Barnardsville all the way down, you'll see those are the most hard hit areas there to the east of Asheville, down that side. That's Swannanoa too, for sure. Those are just cars and automobiles and such that they've recovered, and some haven't been recovered. There's still cars upside down in culverts and ditches and other things. There was a huge like a dump truck that had rocks in the back of it that the water flipped that thing over. That's how strong this water is down there. So those are the only videos. Here is one of the setups. This is at First Baptist Swannanoa. That's actually not, that's the command and control center. That's not the front side of First Baptist Swannanoa. On the other side of this building, they've just got it set up almost like an open air market, except no money's exchanged. You can just go in and get whatever you need that's right there. But those are disaster relief vehicles, command and control, and they'll be like Texas and Oklahoma. I think those are Oklahomas, but Oklahoma, Texas, Kentucky, all kinds of Baptists have come to the rescue. This was a road that we passed on Tuesday. We were headed out of the mountains, headed home, and half the road is gone right here, and that's why they have these temporary lights. We were sitting at this light waiting to be allowed to pass. It was a single lane road now. To the right here is a river that we were on. Anywhere that was close to a river or a stream, everything washed down into it. Which leads me to tell you this, if I don't tell you, one of the biggest things that's going to be a problem going forward, and we talked to a church and several homeowners that said this, in North Carolina, when you own a home, and it's close to a public waterway like a river or something, you only own to the middle of that waterway. That's how they know your property line. Well, many of the rivers have moved after this, and so a church lost a couple of 100 yards of their property because the river is closer to them by a couple of 100 yards. And so these are things that are going to have to be sorted out. While I'm talking about those legal things, we talked to a lady who lost everything, and except her car and her husband. No loss of life, but everything they owned. And there, you understand this is what has to happen so they don't give money to the wrong people. But she has to prove ownership of that place that no longer has a house any longer, which means that all their documents went with wherever the house went. And so they're having to go to the Register of Deeds and do those kinds of background things just to get the paperwork started to get aid, because you have to prove. And there are others. The reason why she was telling us this is because there was somebody else that was already making a claim on her property. Not for her property's sake, but to get her money from the federal government to be a part of that. So more than you can imagine is going on over there. And just think about the stress of that kind of situation. Okay, so think about going to the DMV to get your real ID and them tell you that the piece of paper that you brought to prove that you live at the house you do isn't the right one. You need to go home and do it again. If you've ever been in that situation, that's frustrating. Well, now it's your home. Your home is gone. And the way to start back, you have to get the right paperwork, and you don't have the right paperwork. That's the level of anxiety that some of the folks there are going through. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and she too had mentioned she lost all her baby pictures and family pictures and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So just lots of loss that goes beyond loss of life, even really beyond loss of a house. You can build a house again, but it's hard to build all of the legacy that was in the house and all the other things. This is one of those private bridges that's been washed out. You can see where the road goes, and it's supposed to catch up there, and there's a guy who's got a house up at the top there. That whole section is gone. And I mean, when we went by, was he standing out there when we went by? There was one place that we went, and they were just standing out there just looking at it like, yeah, that's right. That was the driveway that fell down. Like, so anyway, this is a fellowship hall of the Barnardsville Baptist Church. And you can tell they've already mucked it out. There was a guy named Jimmy and his wife named Patricia. Jimmy was on a tractor when we came up. And they don't have a pastor. This church doesn't have a pastor. They have an interim pastor. And that interim pastor works for the Asheville Water Department. So you know what he's busy doing. He's busy working with Asheville trying to get water back. And so this couple have kind of taken over the operations at their church. And they cleaned this out. A guy showed up, didn't even know the Lord, just showed up at the church and said, I want to help. He brought his own camper and everything else, and he's helping Jimmy do all this work. And so they were able to meet for the first time Sunday in this room right here. Let's see. Yeah, this is their sanctuary. So obviously it used to have carpet all here. Yeah, that's the floor ripped out. And this is, so think of our church. Our church is, the sanctuary is elevated and there's stuff underneath it. Same way with this church. And if you can see, you can't see here, but up to about 6 inches on the leg of the pews on the second floor was where the mud got to. And so, obviously, so to picture our sanctuary, except smaller, but the way we're set up like a cross, where you've got people on this side and people on this side and people straight ahead. That's the way this small room is. I'm on the edge, where one edge of the cross, the pulpit is actually to my right, but I couldn't go out there because the floor won't hold me. So they're going to have to refloor that whole sanctuary. You can see they've already got the drywall out on the back wall up there. Wait, there we go, right there. They've already pulled that out. I think they probably had drywall in front of the brick, and that's why the brick is exposed now. And then, so eventually, they're going to have to do a lot. They've ripped out their bathrooms. They're going to have to put their bathrooms back in. This is probably the church that I'm going to recommend that we help. I think this is the one that needed it. It was the only, I'll tell you more about it later. So anyway, that's Barnardsville Baptist Church. We'll probably be there eventually. That's the last picture, that same picture that we had earlier which is the recovery center. So let me just talk to you a little bit. Oh, no, I got more. But wait, there's more. This is one of those bridges that stood that is catching the debris as it's coming downstream. So any bridge that's still in existence, it's not a really tall bridge, it looks like this with stuff that came in on top of it to snag up. There's the Oklahoma Baptist Disaster Relief Command Center. So here's the disaster relief agencies on the ground. We didn't see, I don't know that. No, you couldn't smell anything. Everything looked like they were operational. They were not yet able to drink the water, but they were able to bathe in it, flush it, and if they needed to, boil it and drink it. But they all have water back. They've got electricity back, at least a lot of the places. We saw Duke Power. If we saw one, we saw 50 on our rounds. Yeah, no, we didn't. I didn't smell any of that. So the North Carolina Baptists on Mission Disaster Relief is operating 14 feeding sites out there now, which stretches us really, really thin. But they're doing it. There were 2 or 3 days that they served 135,000 meals a day on those, which includes that's if somebody had a repeat meal, they were counted each time. But still, that's a lot of work for volunteers to be out there. So North Carolina Baptists on Mission Disaster Relief were there. Illinois, Kentucky, Texas, Oklahoma disaster relief teams were there too. There's probably more. Those are the ones we physically saw. I kept a count of the different states that we saw. So we physically saw those. FEMA is on site. The lady that we were talking about that lost everything, I asked her about her needs. And there's lots and lots of disinformation that's going around. It's a political season, and people will politicize anything, including a disaster like this. But from what she said that the $750 or whatever that they got was for food. That was go buy food and replace that. And they're in discussions with FEMA once she can prove the ownership and all the other stuff for disbursement again on top of that to go for some of the loss. So FEMA's there. They're doing work, whether it's good work or bad work. That's not my business to say. They're just there doing work. They are on site. There are lots and lots and lots of white FEMA trailers at one of the rest areas between Hendersonville and Asheville. And then there were other FEMA setups that we passed. But recognize I didn't drive all over every piece of asphalt there. I don't know what was there or what wasn't there. But FEMA was there. Samaritan's Purse was there, but I didn't see them. We didn't actually see Samaritan's Purse. We weren't in the area they were in. Duke Energy, as I said, they were all over the place. It was interesting. I was with Robin. Hold on for a second. I was with Robin, and Robin was a city worker. So Robin worked in a municipal here, Parks and Rec, and he said after Hugo, they had all of the Parks and Rec folk, all the stop what they were doing and help clean up after Hugo. Well, he said something that we could see, and that's really good for us to remember. People often tell funny jokes about road workers and county workers and city workers that they don't do anything, or there's one worker and 16 supervisors or other things like that. But what we saw there was lots and lots and lots of city, municipal, county workers all over the place doing all kinds of stuff that was not their job description. So we probably need to go easy on the jokes because they were really out in force. Yes, sir. Were you going to say something, Jimmy? I didn't talk to anybody there. I'm just seeing stuff. You're going to hear in a second that Robin and I had a very laser sharp job description. And so we didn't have time to go gallivanting and talking to people and all kinds of other stuff. We were busy. In fact, I'm still exhausted from being busy. And so not busy physically. You'd almost wish for that so you could go to sleep at night. But it was other kinds of stuff, and we'll tell you in it. And then many other volunteers, churches, all kinds of folks out there. Like I said, the guy just shows up and says, I'm going to go work, and all of that. So lots and lots of different agencies on the ground. So our mission on Monday and Tuesday, we were working with the North Carolina Baptist Convention and the Buncombe Baptist Association. Now, we were not working, this is where it gets confusing. That's why I told you who was on the ground before. We were not working with the North Carolina Baptist on Mission Disaster Relief. So those folks are out there feeding and cutting trees and scraping muck and all that kind of stuff. While we wore the shirts so we could get around, so we could get in and out of places, we were actually working for the North Carolina Baptist Convention. So if you think of it, the convention is here. Disaster relief is one arm of the convention. We were working with the convention to go out explicitly and make contact with pastors and with churches. They wanted to have somebody put their eyes on congregations and pastors to make sure that they hadn't washed away or anything like that. They didn't have a need. So that was specifically what we went to do. We had 16 churches assigned to us in those 2 days. I'll show you the route we went and all that kind of stuff. We did 10 on Monday and 6 yesterday. And so we were to make contact with those 16 churches. We were to assess the condition of the congregation, which included their church building, to find out if they had any members that were lost in the hurricane, and if there was any loss of significant property, somebody lose their whole home, somebody lose those kind of things. But we were mainly there to assess the pastor and staff, not assess them like, are they doing a good job, but assess them, do they need help? Are they... have they experienced so much shock that they can't do what they've been called to do? Those kinds of things. So we were there really mainly to make contact with the congregation and see how they were doing. And they weren't all churches that were affected, because nobody knows which churches were affected. So we were going to figure out which churches were affected and which weren't. So there were 10 teams, there were 20 of us, all over Buncombe County on Monday, and then beyond Buncombe County yesterday. Yes, sir.
Did y'all feel that the pastors seemed overwhelmed?
Not yet, but they'll be there soon. Yeah, we didn't speak actually to many pastors because they were all helping other churches. They were out on the field. They weren't at their churches. And so it was, but we did speak to lots of people at those churches. They were just not the pastors. We spoke to others and just, in fact, I had, the guy from Roseman called me today, Robin. Whited was his name, last name Whited. And he called me, and he's doing good. And so this church in Roseman is on a river, and they had a flood 2 years ago, and because of the flood 2 years ago, they built a wall. It's about 8 to 10 inches thick. And so it's 8 to 10. Is that your polite way of correcting the way I was saying it? Okay, good. So it was Rosman, and so it was 8 to 10 inches thick. And it goes like a courtyard, but it's 6 feet high around the church. And on the 2 doorways for it, they take metal door and they slide them down in there, and it keeps the water out of the church building. And he actually said that it would have been in the church sanctuary if it weren't for that wall that they had built. So it's like permanent sandbagging that they've got. He even said it's ugly. I mean, you don't want this at your church, but if you're there, I guess you got to have it. So that's a good question. And I was just, thank you for correcting me. Vaughn and Tanya spell it just the same way, and they're the Rosemans. All right, yeah, that's right. All right, here we go. So here is a map. Now, I'm not expecting you to know it. I'm going to show it what we're doing. I'll show it on both sides. So this right here is Asheville, right? And if you go down here, there's Hendersonville. We actually stayed right out from Hendersonville over here. So Asheville Hendersonville. Out here is Rosman, right there, and Lake Toxaway is out here a little bit further. Down here is Boiling Springs, Greenville, and then over here is Charlotte. Same thing over here. Asheville is right here in the middle. And the reason why it's such a small thing is I'm going to show you where we went and what we did. So, is Henry here? Not you, Henry. The other Henry. Henry Thompson. He was? Okay. Well, you might like this too, Henry. There's a place called Tiger Town on this map, so you'll like that. But that's Mars Hill right here. And so we actually started in Mars Hill. We had the northernmost section, and I'll show it to you in a second. And so we traveled this whole piece right here, and our 10 churches that we went to on Monday were in that piece right there. So let me show you a little bit better. There's Mars Hill now, right here. Mars Hill. The first church we went to was out here. It was a satellite church of a church that was in Asheville. And so we ran into, they had actually housed there the veterans home. So there's a veterans home in Asheville. It was flooded, and they took lots of the veterans up to that church, and they were loading them up to send them back on the day we got there. We didn't get to speak to a pastor, but we did speak to a guy who was leading that charge. His name was Randy, and he was a good guy. We prayed with him. And so their church was, and then we drove down through here, through a couple of cow pastures and over some small bridges down here, and we went to, in this little loop that's right here, this little loop that's right here, there are 4 churches on that loop. And so there was one here that we didn't get to. This Locust Grove was where the Illinois Baptist Disaster Relief is stationed, and they had a big exercise going on, but their pastor was helping another pastor. The pastor down here wasn't here. We talked to him by phone because his mom's home wasn't washed away, but everything around it was washed away, and so he was with her. And then down here it was a biker church, and nobody was there, but we did talk to their pastor by phone. And then we came underneath the interstate on this side, and there's a loop. There's a loop here that had 3 more churches. Right here is where we had to cut off and go back the other way and go this way back into it. But we saw all those churches. Every one of the churches, if they have a room like this, half this size, a quarter this size, if they have any room like this, including some of their sanctuaries, it is filled from side to side, front to back with donations. They have said, every person we talk to, don't send anything else. Some churches are having to rent storage units to put the donations in, which, as you can imagine, you don't want to be spending money, but you don't want it to go bad. And so they don't need any more water. There were so many skids of water that they were using it to channel traffic with. I mean, they use it as blockades so you don't go in and steal stuff. There is so much stuff there that in fact, the very first words out of the associational missionary strategist's mouth was, don't send any more stuff. They just can't take it. There's nowhere to put it. It's sitting on skids and on pallets at distribution points, and because the water is back and gas is back and all that stuff, they don't need anything else like that. They do need some stuff, and I'll tell you what it is in a second. But they ask, so every one of these churches had makeshift distribution points. There was one under a picnic shelter with 3 ladies who were probably older than Max sitting up underneath the shelter, and they were giving out what anybody wanted. Some were even unmanned. It says, come take what you want, because there's so much stuff that it's just everywhere. Now, that's a good thing, but like I know that our association sent a tractor trailer today. They don't need that anymore. They don't. There's no place to put it, and so we just have to be wise about how we help, or else it's just going to pile up and rot. A lot of stuff that people sent. I'm going to preach just for a second, if y'all let me. Don't give your leftovers to Jesus. Right? If you want to donate something, get something that's high quality. There was junk everywhere at those churches. Stuff that nobody wants, right? I mean, don't do that. You know, if you want the church to have a couch, go buy a brand new one. Don't give the one that's been in your basement for 30 years and gotten wet twice. All right? Let's be good stewards of what we have, but you don't need to give. If you're going to be generous, be generous. If you're not, don't do it. Ask Ananias and Sapphira about that, right? So just give your best or don't. And so I want to tell you about those ladies, though. That was in that loop. We came out here. There's a little church down this road called Antioch. I talked to Caleb Spottily. The cell service is still bad, so Caleb Poole. I talked to him this morning, and so he's a pastor there. He walked 4 miles in mud. He didn't tell me this. One of his church members told me this. 4 miles in mud to get to her house to check on her. And she was proud of her pastor, if you can imagine that. And his wife and 5 children were manning the distribution point at their church. And so we prayed for Jessica and, let me see if I can call them. It was Leah and Grace and Uriah and Isaiah and Sam. And so those 5 kids from age 10 on down to, she was holding Isaiah in her arms. And so we prayed for them in their group right there. And you could tell she was exhausted. I mean, having 5 kids will exhaust you. But in the middle of all this, it was exhausting. And she was glad that we were there and glad that we prayed for her husband. And then the last stop of our day on Monday was in Barnardsville right there. Right here. So if you look, let me show you this. If you look from Pensacola, which I didn't know was in North Carolina, but if you look from Pensacola straight down the Pisgah National Forest, you come to Montreat, Black Mountain, Swannanoa, Bat Cave, all the way down. That whole section is the worst that we saw. That's where everything, and so Barnardsville is right there on the edge of the Pisgah National Forest. Now I'll go back here. It's right here, Barnardsville. And there's a river that runs right along the road there, and that's what got up into their church. And that's why we're suggesting that be the one that we partner with. They don't have a pastor. It'd be a good way to just jump in and help in the ways that we can as we go. So that was Monday. Tuesday, this is back to the big map. Again, Asheville. We're staying down here in Hendersonville, just outside of Hendersonville. On Tuesday, we drew the short stick again, and we drove all the way out here to a place called Sapphire, right here. Lake Toxaway is right here. And then we worked our way back up in here. I'm going to show you a better map for that. So here is Lake Toxaway. Here is Sapphire. Our first church was in Sapphire, and then we worked back and down. There's Rossman right there. And we worked back down, and then there's the North Carolina, South Carolina line, and then we moved back up to the interstate, back up to Dunn's Rock here. So there were 6 churches here, 4 along this section, and then Dunn's Rock and Cedar Mountain. And we had to leave note cards for them. We tried to call. We didn't have cell service there at all day or all morning. And so we worked our way up here and talked to some churches. So most of these churches, I want you to get your idea what these churches are. Most of them are running between probably 20 and 60. And that's why they haven't been heard from. Almost every one of their pastors is bivocational. So he's either out at his job or he's off serving in the community. And so he's not able to be right there on station, which is why we didn't see a lot of them. But we did talk to a lot of lay people who were leading the charge. I didn't tell you this, but in one of the other churches on Monday, they had the American Red Cross set up. They were there, and they had a shower point there, a laundry point there, and just all kinds of service-oriented things at that church. So the churches there that weren't affected have rallied. They are hooking and jabbing with the best of them. They're ministering to their communities. They're being who you'd want them to be in their communities. The issue is they're going to get tired. And so they're going to need people to come in and help. So that's what we did. We saw these churches yesterday and then drove back in the afternoon and came on home. We didn't have any problem with anything. We had water. We ate at Bojangles on Monday. I got gas while we were there. Well, we did have a problem there. They didn't take our card at the pump. We had to go inside and do it. But that's first world problems, right? So that was easy. We didn't run into any issues where we couldn't go any further or couldn't find a way around. How did I get to Asheville? I went to Kings Mountain on 85 and then went straight across 74 through Shelby and then up 26 that way. And we didn't there was not a lick of problems. A couple of speed traps, but I was going the right speed, so but we were doing all right. Well, we did have some problems, but it was just those people from the northern tribes that don't know how to drive. If you're from a northern tribe, forgive me. Just learn to drive. That's all I ask. The same Pennsylvania driver pulled in front of us 3 times yesterday. The same guy, and I'm like, finally he got off at Shelby, and I'm like, thank the Lord he's not going to Charlotte. So, here's the needs according to those we spoke with. Immediate relief supplies are not needed. They're beyond the immediate relief. They need cold weather preparations, buddy heaters. So LP liquid propane heaters. Some of them they have where you put in the little one, or some of them even have the long hose where you can plug into your grill. LP. We saw lots and lots and lots of LP canisters being filled while we were there. Tons of propane out there. I know it wasn't that way 3 weeks ago. It is that way now. I saw a pallet. I thought about helping myself, but I thought that God would get me, so I didn't. I saw a pallet of jerry cans, gas cans, plastic gas cans, stacked up to about this high at one of those places. They were given away to people if they needed them. And I thought, man, that's $30 for one of those. I'll take that, but I didn't. But they were there. They need volunteers to work through agencies. They don't need Lone Ranger people to come in there and just start doing stuff. They need volunteers to work through agencies, either disaster relief teams, churches, or other volunteer groups that have command and control. You don't want to just go out there and do stuff. You want to go where somebody knows what they're doing, there's a strategy, and that you can plug in and be a part of their strategy, get things done. One of the Illinois Baptists said that they had 140 jobs that needed to be done. That is people calling in and saying, we need muck out, we need shockwave, we need whatever they need there. And so they have 140. They'd already knocked out 50 of those 140. So they're being done in those short-term disaster relief kind of stuff. These include muck-out teams and rebuild teams. They need semi-permanent housing, trailers, connexes, storage building that they can do. By the way, I'm not suggesting we do that. I'm just telling you what they need on site. There's a lot of people in tents still, and FEMA should be the ones that provide those kinds of trailers. It looked like they were all parked at that rest area that we went by, but it was hard to tell if there was a plan to move them or anything like that. We were going pretty fast when we passed it. And then they need long-term rebuild volunteers for 2025. So they need people who will give a week and go there because this is going to be years, right? We still have active job sites along the coast from the hurricanes that went through 5 years ago. So, I mean, it takes a long time to rebuild some of this stuff. And so they need long-term rebuild volunteers. Here.
On those buddy heaters and that type thing, is it better to donate those or to give them money?
I'm glad you asked. Here's what we're going to do. The initial thing that I propose for First Baptist Concord to do is to do a little drive, a collection of buddy heaters. Now, here's what I'd recommend. I'll show you a slide in a second. The buddy heaters run. The smaller ones are like $70. The larger ones are $200, the ones that have the hose and all that stuff. What I would suggest is either Sunday school classes or friends, small groups, or if you can by yourself, go in and purchase one or two of those. We'll collect them here at the church, and when we have them, Robin is going, and this needs to be pretty quick, next week or so, Robin is going to run them back to that church that we want to connect with. And what he can do is he can then drop those there with them. They'll disperse them because they've already, that's where our ladies who do the prayer shawl ministry, how many did you give us?
10 shawls and 2 baby shawls.
Okay, so 10 shawls and 2 baby shawls they sent with us, and we were able to leave them at that church because they were, she and her husband in that side-by-side that they've got were running up and down to all the people who lost stuff and was able to distribute things there. And so if we got them, the buddy heaters, they'll be able to get them out to people who need them as soon as, probably that day that we dropped them, they would take them. They said they wanted to see us again, and I think that's a good spot. That it was the hardest hit church that we saw the whole time we were there. I think another point would be that church at Antioch, because it was only about a mile up the road, or a church called Antioch. And I think that he would also, he's the one that walked 4 miles, I think he also would be able to distribute stuff like that. So as soon as we get those, if you'd like to give somebody some money to go into it, you can do that as well.
Can you send that?
Yeah, hang on. I'll show you. I got a slide for that. Yes, ma'am?
So would you just need the buddy heaters, or do you need propane?
Buddy heaters primarily. I was already thinking of that along those lines. What we don't want is everybody to bring propane and nobody bring heaters. So what we need are the heaters, and, Robin and I can go in together and buy, or anybody can. But after we see how many heaters we have, then we can buy the propane to go with it. Because that's not that much, maybe $10 a canister, maybe even a little less than that. And we could send those canisters. You can get them a flat, pretty cheap. So, but I'll show you that picture in a second. We need an immediate response team sign up. Now, what I mean by immediate response team is when we get enough of those buddy heaters together and Robin says, all right, I want to make the trip. If you can drop everything and go with him, let's say 12 hours, 24 hours warning, and you can go with him, I want you to sign up on that immediate response team thing. Now, maybe other things that we need. He may hear of something else. I may hear of something else. Once we start getting in there with more than just the two of us, there'll be other people who can hear, make contacts and do that. And so if you can be that kind of a person, now what I'm thinking of is somebody who doesn't have a lot of responsibilities, maybe retired or not, kind of like Robin. I know you're responsible for Joan. Joan, we saw a great road sign for you. It said Nora's Way, but Robin said, we need one that says Jones Way. Yeah, he said, and I'd put it right there behind my house, Jones Way. And so, but this is somebody who could go at just the drop of a hat or the drop of 12 hours. And like Robin calls you and says, hey, I'm headed out tomorrow. We're going to make a turnaround trip. Can you go with? And that's not everybody. But if you can be that, we want your name, and the sign-up sheets are up here. We need a near-term volunteer sign-up. Now, what this is between now and Christmas, we have the connection, especially with that Illinois disaster relief team that has the 140 jobs. They have jobs waiting. All they need is volunteers to do them. And so if you and your family, let's say, or you and a couple of friends want to go do this on behalf of our church with, Illinois disaster relief teams, then I want you to sign up on that list, the near-term list. That means between now and Christmas, you're willing to take a weekend or take 2 days like we did. We did it all in 2 days. Or even make one long day, go volunteer with them, work a couple of projects, and then come back. If you're willing to do that, I want you to sign up that near-term volunteer sign up, and it's going to ask at the end, are you willing to lead? Question mark. All you have to do is say yes or no. Let's say that it's Robin. I'm using him because I can throw him under the bus and he won't get mad at me. But let's say Robin signs that thing up, and Robin says, and I know Robin says, yes, I can lead. Then what I would do as the pastor or somebody in our church would call them and say, hey, here's the connection, put your team together, and we'll get you what you need. And so the team leader would, if they're going to stay overnight, would be responsible for figuring out where you're going to stay. I can give you leads, but you'll have to put the whole trip together. This is something, we don't have time to put the trip together, but if you're wanting to lead and you can put the trip together, we want you to do it. We want to empower you to do it. So if that's you, sign up there. If you don't want to lead, but you want to be on one of those, put your name down. We'll introduce you to somebody who does want to lead, and y'all can go together. So that, and if this doesn't work, that's fine. What we're doing is trying to give as many options to get this thing rolling as we can to bring help to to some places that we know need help. And when we get in the door there, then we'll find more places to help, and we'll be able to maybe do more or extend it or those kinds of things. We're just trying to get initiated now. The third is you'd say, I don't want to lead a group. I want to go on a church-led group by somebody who knows what they're doing. And I can't do it on the spur of the moment. But if you give me 6 weeks, I can plan vacation and I can go do it. That is the planned volunteer team sign up. That is for 2025. And we will put together, we're already talking about putting together 1 or 2 or 3 trips next year to where we take a group and we do something with one of the disaster relief teams, with one of the churches that we're working with, one of those where there's command and control on the ground, and we go and we just, weak minds and strong backs, just helping them out, doing what they need done. So if that's you, then you can sign up for the planned volunteer team sign up. The last thing that we're talking about doing is anybody ever, well, I'll just tell you, we don't have time for guessing games. The International Mission Board does this regularly. They'll take a church like ours, and they'll invite you to go to a place like, let's say, the Philippines. And you go to the Philippines, and they put you in a resort center, and you are the hosts at this resort center for all the missionaries in East Asia that come together out of their mission areas, come together, have a retreat. Their kids have something. They eat well. They might get a card to go shopping with, to go spend a little bit of money. And I was talking with a couple of the strategists over there, and I recommended that somebody do this, and they said, well, that sounds good. Why don't you do it? And so I'm exploring the possibility of taking a bunch of our folks over and maybe partner with some other churches in our area, either take them over somewhere that way or bring the pastors this way and their families, and we pamper them and minister to them and love on them for 2 or 3 days, and then we send them back into the ministry field. And it may even be that one of the things we do is give them a Sunday off and send some of the guys that are here that can preach or teach to go fill their pulpits so that they can just have a down day. I asked a guy today, Nate, the guy I talked to today. I said, what do you need? And he said, I need a day off. And I said, man, we can give it to you. And he's like, well, who's going to preach at my church? He said, I'm the only one. And so I was like, okay, good point. But those kinds of things that we can provide for the congregations and pastors as well. So we'll be fiddling with that in the days to come. North Carolina Baptists loved that idea, and so one of their guys who does pastoral care is supposed to call me, and we're going to try to do it. So that's the starting point. Those are some things that we're working. This is very fluid. We're only 3.5 weeks in. There's a lot that has to be done. We need to prepare to be present in the western North Carolina mountains for years. And so we may start out with 3 trips next year and maybe cut it back to 1 a year after that. But whatever it is, we need to be there until they don't need us anymore. And so they were very, very glad that we were there. We didn't have one person who was upset that we were over there. There they are. So you can get them at Amazon, Lowe's, Sam's, Northern Tool, Home Depot. Sam's has this most expensive one that I said is $200. They have them for $149 right now. Somebody was in Sam's and told me that it's on sale. So this one right here is $149 right here. That's the cheapest one. You'll see that over on this side is where you plug in that little canister and it screws up in there. Obviously, the heat output is different from both of them as well. But if you don't have any heat, the little guy is better than nothing. In fact, I'll just tell you this. If you don't have any heat, a candle works, right? Yes. I mean, with ventilation, but yes. They're going to take them into places and heat them up. Yeah, but it has to have ventilation. I mean, you can't take them into it. Can't throw a poncho liner over top of yourself and suck in the fumes until you see colors. But yeah, there's also one at Amazon for $77. If you look far enough, I think you can find it for that too. But any way you want to get it, if you want to split it with somebody, we don't want anybody to hurt themselves here. We're not asking that. And I'm not, like if you pray or if you ask the Lord what He'd have you give and you just can't do it, that's fine. There's no pressure for this. But what we're going to use these buddy heaters for is another reason to go out there and make more connections and find out more ways that we can help. This is just the quickest, best way to get in there, because who's going to say no when you back these things up and say, hey, you start giving these things out, right? And so that's what we want to do. I think Robin is ready to take that shipment whenever it happens. If it's not Robin, I can drive my truck or somebody else can do it. It doesn't have to be us, but Robin knows the people on the ground. So one of us need to go, at least initially, back so that we can rekindle these connections that we made. Hey, in fact, you can bring them and stack them right up here like we do the book bags. Just bring them, just put them right up here. And as soon as we have a truckload full, we'll take them. And so there's no timetable. We just wanted to put feet to our thoughts as soon as we can. And we brainstormed this on the way back, knowing that I was going to be standing up here tonight telling you, do this. And so that's why we have sign-up sheets and we have an opportunity to buy these. If these are outside your budget and you find a smaller one, they have one that actually screws down onto the top of one of those canisters, and it's just like this big, and it's just for a single person. But if that's all you can afford and you want to be a part, get that and bring it up here and put it with the rest of them. They're going to take this heat. It's getting colder over there, and they're going to need this heat. So anything like that will be a blessing. Uh-huh. Okay, cool. Yeah, so at Pointer's Ace. Yeah, I didn't put everybody up there. I did you know how lazy pastors are. I did a Google search. The pictures came up, and I typed what it was under there. There they are. There's the price. That's it. So, and then it was after that somebody said Sam's has got them. So you can get them all over the place. You don't have to buy them at one of those stores. Like I don't care where you buy them, but if you want to buy them, get them here, stack them up here, and we'll carry them. Yes, sir. Yeah, that might be good, but it's a little different when you have it in your hand and you set it up here yourself. We may do that in the future. Next load might be good, but there's just something special about you going out and picking out your own thing and bringing it up here and almost giving your offering to the Lord that way. So that's a great point. I had thought that, but I think there's more invested in it if you carry it up yourself. Not that we're making a show of it, but I mean, it's just, you're invested. When you set it up here, it's personal. You've touched it. Yeah. So, no, ma'am. I think that we'll handle the canisters. They've got lots and lots of propane out there. We were watching for that, and I forgot where we were. Was it Swannanoa or somewhere else? They had this huge, and the guy's only job was filling them. He was just standing there filling them, and they were stacked over here like cylinders for your grill, and they're just stacking them over there. So they've got gas. They've got everything that we were told they didn't have before. They've got it there. They just need help. Yes, sir.
Loaded up to the 20-gallon tank.
Yes, sir.
They'll last a lot longer.
Yes, sir. That's right. Yeah, the one over there's got a little bit longer when it's got a thing. But do what you want. I don't want money to be I don't want you to not be able to participate because we put the Cadillacs up here all the way across. So find what you can do. If you can't do it by yourself, get in with other group and say, hey, if I gave 10 and you gave 10 and we got this person to give 10, we could all go together and do this. We don't want anybody to get hurt doing this, but we can really, really make a difference out there in Western North Carolina. Any other questions? I know this went long. Walmart, I didn't check, but they might. If Sam's does, Walmart may. Yes, ma'am. They'll have something like that if they don't have that exact name. I just use that name brand because that's what they all talking about. They keep saying, bring a buddy heater. Well, that's Mr. Buddy or whatever. I don't know. I just looked up that. Were you going to say something, Robin?
I know just from 20-plus years of doing some mission work, let's don't get hung up in the details. That's God's business. He knows where each one of these heaters want to go to the person it's going to go to. So let's don't put a fork in the system and put a stop to it. Let's just, this is what we think. It's not exactly what God thinks all the time, so things may change. So
Yeah.
if something doesn't go the way you think, don't.
Yeah, this is the beginning of a marathon, right? We are just running off the starting blocks. And all that I've showed you is just Robin and I bouncing stuff off of each other and me collating it and saying, let's try this and see how far we get and then get going. We can always call North Carolina Disaster Relief and get on their list of volunteers and do it that way. But there's something special, I think, and Robin does too, there's something special about adopting a church or adopting a family and being right there. We do want to support others. We want to support what they're doing, but it's something special about being on the ground with people that now that you know, brothers and sisters in Christ, and you're giving way together. Are you going to put tracks or anything? Tracks? Not for these. These are going to churches. These are going to churches. Yeah, they've got that kind of stuff. Yeah, right now we're not. We're gonna give them what they've asked for, and then we'll see where it goes from there. Yeah, we are not for sure ignoring the gospel side of it. Yeah, no, I hadn't planned on it. We can. I mean, if you want to do that, we can. But whatever. Just what we want to do is get these things in the hands of the churches so they can get them out. Yeah, that's right. So let me pray. I went 15 minutes long. Thank you for being here. I thank you for all your questions. I'll be around for a little bit after this. Lord, thank you for your love for us. Thank you for the opportunity to help those who are in need. And Lord, I pray that we would be good stewards of all that you've given us. We love you, Lord, and we thank you for this opportunity. In Jesus' name, amen.